Imagine a woman, cloaked in midnight shadows, whispering prayers not for mercy, but for vengeance. Her eyes, burning with the fire of ancient prophets, fixed on a ledger of souls, names etched in blood, families torn like pages from a forbidden Bible. What if the Moses of her people wasn't just a guide to freedom, but a divine avenger, unleashing a plague on the pharaohs of the south? One act, shrouded in eternal secrecy, that made empires of sin crumble. Feel the chill, it's coming for you too. In the dim flicker of a single candle, hidden in the bowels of a Philadelphia basement, Harriet Tubman knelt before a cracked wooden table, her calloused fingers tracing invisible maps on the scarred surface. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and smoldering wick, shadows dancing like restless spirits on the rough-hewn walls. It was March 1858, and the world above bustled with horse-drawn carriages clattering over cobblestones, merchants hawking wares under gas lamps that cast a sickly yellow glow. But down here, in this Quaker's sanctuary, time itself seemed to hold its breath, pregnant with the weight of unspoken sins. Harriet's face, weathered by years of evasion and endurance, bore the marks of a life forged in the crucible of bondage. Her eyes, dark and unyielding, held a gaze that could pierce souls, eyes that had stared down bounty hunters in moonless swamps, eyes that had wept silent tears over the graves of those who didn't make it north. She wasn't the saintly figure etched in marble monuments or printed on currency. No, she was flesh and fury, a vessel for a higher wrath. The Bible she carried, dog-eared and stained with the mud of countless trails, wasn't just scripture, it was her sword, her shield, her map to righteous rebellion. "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," she would murmur in her deepest prayers, but in her heart, she knew sometimes the divine needed human hands to wield the flame. Around her sat a circle of shadows, men whose faces blurred in the low light, their breaths shallow, their postures rigid with the gravity of conspiracy. Thomas Garrett, the white abolitionist with a beard like tangled briars and eyes hollowed by decades of defiance, leaned forward, his voice a hoarse whisper that cut through the silence like a blade. "Harriet, this path, it's not just dangerous. It's damnation itself." His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded a crumpled letter, the paper yellowed and fragile, as if it too feared the light of revelation. But Harriet didn't flinch. She had vanished from the world above, from the abolitionist salons where men like Frederick Douglass pontificated in polished prose, from the safe houses where whispers of her rescues echoed like legends. For 2 years, she would become a ghost, a specter haunting the edges of history's pages. Historians would later puzzle over the gap, sifting through fragments of journals and faded letters, wondering where the Moses had gone. They missed the truth: she hadn't fled, she had descended into the underworld, preparing to drag the beast of slavery into the abyss with her. Picture her in those lost months, slipping through alleyways at dusk, her footsteps muffled by rags wrapped around her boots, the chill wind carrying the acrid smell of coal smoke and river rot. In Baltimore's shadowed streets, where gaslights hummed like watchful eyes, she shed her identity like a serpent's skin. No longer the bold conductor, she became Aunt Mary, an elderly domestic, her hair dusted with ash to mimic the gray of age, her back hunched in perpetual deference. The transformation was alchemical, a potion of lard and soot for her locks, a limp vein so convincingly it ached in her bones by night's end. She moved with the invisible grace of the overlooked, her eyes downcast but her ears attuned to every murmur, every clink of chains in the distance. This disguise wasn't mere theater, it was survival's sacrament. In the border cities, where freedom teased like a mirage, enslaved domestics wove an invisible web of resistance. Harriet tapped into it, her voice a soft cadence of spirituals hummed under her breath, songs that masked messages, their melodies twisting like vines around hidden thorns. "Swing low, sweet chariot," she'd sing while scrubbing floors, the rhythm altered just enough to signal a meeting, a warning, a call to arms. These weren't idle tunes, they were coded psalms, invoking the Exodus not as history, but as prophecy, unfolding in real time. Her plan coalesced in those clandestine hours, born from a revelation that struck her like lightning during a fevered prayer. The Underground Railroad, noble as it was a trickle against a tidal wave of torment. For every soul she ferried north, across swollen rivers under starless skies, through thickets that clawed its skin like demonic fingers, dozens more were bred into chains. The South's economy wasn't built on cotton alone, it thrived on the commodification of flesh, documented in ledgers that reduced God's children to entries in a profane ledger. Births noted like livestock tallies, families severed with the stroke of a quill, values assigned based on strength, fertility, obedience, or the lack thereof. Harriet saw it clearly. Slavery wasn't just chains, it was a Tower of Babel, built on paper pillars of ownership and inheritance. Destroy the records, and the structure cracks. Doubt creeps in like rot. Who owns whom? Whose bloodline is pure profit? The spiritual horror deepened it. These documents were blasphemies, mocking the divine image in man, turning creation into commerce. In her visions, those narcotic dreams that plagued her since a childhood head injury, blending prophecy with pain, she saw flames purging the sin, like Sodom's fire raining down. But to strike at the heart required precision, not just passion. The central nerve was in Richmond, a brick fortress squatting in the city's pulsing core, its windows barred like prison cells, its vaults guarded by men with eyes as cold as steel. This wasn't some rural barn, it was the citadel of commerce, where traders in human cargo converged, their ledgers fat with genealogies tracing back generations. Breeding farms, they called them euphemistically, plantations where women were yoked to fertility like beasts, their wombs weaponized for wealth. The records detailed it all: mulatto female, age 22, proven breeder, 3 live births, valued at $1,200. Harriet's stomach churned at the thought, her prayers turning to pleas for justice, for a reckoning that echoed the plagues of Egypt. To infiltrate, she needed allies, not just bodies, but souls aligned with her fire. In Baltimore, she found James, a clerk whose literacy was a secret sharper than any dagger. They met in a fog-shrouded cemetery, gravestones leaning like accusing fingers under a sickle moon. The air hung heavy with the scent of decaying leaves and fresh earth, owls hooting like omens. James, tall and gaunt, his skin etched with the lines of suppressed rage, approached warily, his voice a murmur carried on the wind. "I know your face behind the mask, Moses. You're courting hellfire." She didn't deny it. Instead, she unfolded her vision, a symphony of sabotage, timed to the tick of an invisible clock. On one fateful night, flames would bloom across the South, in plantation offices from Virginia's rolling hills to North Carolina's humid lowlands. Not wild conflagrations, but surgical strikes. A lantern accidentally toppled onto oil-soaked papers, a spark from a hearth leaping to dry ledgers. The central blow in Richmond, where she and a hand-picked team would breach the vault, pouring kerosene like holy water over the stacks, igniting a bonfire of vanities. The risks were biblical: betrayal lurking like Judas in the garden, capture meaning not swift death, but a spectacle of suffering designed to crush spirits. Harriet imagined the gallows, the crowd's jeers like demonic chants, her body broken as a warning. Yet doubt fueled her faith. This was her Gethsemane, her cup she would not pass. "The Lord didn't part the Red Sea with whispers," she'd say, her voice steady as stone. "He drowned the wicked in waves." Building the network was a masterpiece of subtlety, a web spun from shadows. No written words, too perilous, too permanent. Instead, spirituals became signals. "Go down," Moses sung with a drawn-out chorus meant 2 weeks hence. Quilts draped over lines in slave quarters, their patterns shifting like constellations, a zigzag for proceed, a circle for abort. Travelers carried marks on wagons, a notch in wood signaling safe passage of intel, a knotted rope hiding dates in its twists. Enslaved artisans, cooks, drivers, all threads in this tapestry of treason. Recruitment was the soul's trial. Harriet sought not the desperate dreamers yearning for personal flight, but the steadfast warriors willing to sacrifice their dawn for the collective light. In hushed midnight gatherings, under canopies of ancient oaks dripping with Spanish moss, she'd gauge their eyes for the spark of unyielding resolve. "This ain't about your chains alone," she'd whisper, her breath warm against the cool night air. "It's about shattering the forge that makes M." Some turned away, fear coiling like serpents in their guts, others knelt, pledging with clasped hands, their vows sealed in silent prayer. By autumn's chill, as leaves turned blood-red like portents, the pieces aligned. Harriet moved south, her Aunt Mary guise perfected, securing work in Richmond's underbelly, a laundress in a boarding house near the trading office. There, amid steam rising like ghosts from boiling vats, the tang of light biting her nostrils, she observed guard shifts at dawn's first blush, when lamplight faded to gray, delivery wagons rumbling in at noon, crates heavy with fresh horrors, clerks emerging at dusk, faces pinched with the weight of their complicity. The building loomed, its brick facade unassuming yet impregnable, windows shuttered against prying eyes. Inside, she imagined the vaults, iron doors groaning like judgment gates, shelves groaning under tomes of torment. Destroying them wouldn't just erase ink,
it would unravel lineages, sow seeds of legal limbo.
Plantations plunged into disputes, prove she's mine without the papers.
Markets stuttering, insurers balking. The spiritual ripple, families reunited in uncertainty, the sin of separation exposed, divine order hinting at restoration. Yet doubt gnawed, even in her.
Nights alone in her cramped attic room, the roof slanting like a coffin lid, she'd clutch her Bible, fingers tracing verses of fire and brimstone. Psalms of deliverance mingled with nightmares, flames consuming not just paper, but flesh, her own, or innocence caught in the crossfire.
Was this hubris, playing God? Or fulfillment of prophecy?
"Thy will be done," she'd pray, tears tracing salty paths down her cheeks, the room's silence broken only by the distant wail of a train, carrying more souls to auction blocks. James arrived in Richmond under cover of a forged errand, his clerk's ledger hiding maps sketched in invisible ink, lemon juice revealed by candle heat. They met in a market square at twilight, amid the bustle of vendors packing crates, the air rich with scents of baked bread and horse sweat. "The songs are spreading," he murmured, handing her a loaf wrapped in cloth, a message baked within. "From the tobacco fields of Virginia to the rice swamps of Carolina, they're ready. But the patrols are restless, whispers of unrest in the air." Harriet nodded, her stooped form belying the steel in her spine. The plan's scale was staggering, over 50 targets, each a pinpoint of potential inferno, coordinated without a single telegram. Timing hinged on the moon's phase, a waxing gibbous for visibility without betrayal, and a signal chain, a bonfire on a Maryland hill, visible to watchers who would relay via horseback couriers disguised as peddlers. As winter's breath frosted the windows, tension coiled like a spring.
Harriet's dreams intensified. Ripple, families reunited in uncertainty, the sin of separation exposed, divine order hinting at restoration. Yet doubt gnawed, even in her.
Nights alone in her cramped attic room, the roof slanting like a coffin lid, she'd clutch her Bible, fingers tracing verses of fire and brimstone. Psalms of deliverance mingled with nightmares, flames consuming not just paper, but flesh, her own, or innocence caught in the crossfire.
Was this hubris, playing God? Or fulfillment of prophecy?
"Thy will be done," she'd pray, tears tracing salty paths down her cheeks, the room's silence broken only by the distant wail of a train, carrying more souls to auction blocks. James arrived in Richmond under cover of a forged errand, his clerk's ledger hiding maps sketched in invisible ink, lemon juice revealed by candle heat. They met in a market square at twilight, amid the bustle of vendors packing crates, the air rich with scents of baked bread and horse sweat. "The songs are spreading," he murmured, handing her a loaf wrapped in cloth, a message baked within. "From the tobacco fields of Virginia to the rice swamps of Carolina, they're ready. But the patrols are restless, whispers of unrest in the air." Harriet nodded, her stooped form belying the steel in her spine. The plan's scale was staggering, over 50 targets, each a pinpoint of potential inferno, coordinated without a single telegram. Timing hinged on the moon's phase, a waxing gibbous for visibility without betrayal, and a signal chain, a bonfire on a Maryland hill, visible to watchers who would relay via horseback couriers disguised as peddlers. As winter's breath frosted the windows, tension coiled like a spring.
Harriet's dreams intensified.
Visions of burning scrolls unfurling like angels' wings, screams echoing as empires of evil dissolved. But reality intruded, a close call when a patrol stopped her for papers, her heart thundering like thunder as the officer's lantern swung close, illuminating her forged seal. "Move along, old woman," he grunted, dismissing her as harmless. In that moment, she felt the hand of Providence, a shield against the abyss. The network hummed with suppressed energy.
Enslaved recruits, their days spent in toil under whipping winds and overseers' lashes, found solace in the secret, a spark of agency amid degradation. One, a blacksmith named Elijah, forged hidden tools, slim picks for locks, vials of accelerant disguised as medicine.
Another, a seamstress called Ruth, stitched messages into hems, her needles dancing like fate's threads. By November 1858, as frost etched patterns on the ground like divine script, the web was taut, ready to snap. Harriet stood on a Richmond rooftop at midnight, the city sprawled below like a sleeping giant, church steeples piercing the sky like accusatory fingers.
The James River murmured secrets to the shore, its waters dark and unforgiving.
She breathed in the crisp air, laced with wood smoke and distant forge fires, her pulse syncing with the rhythm of impending storm. This wasn't mere sabotage, it was exorcism.
Slavery's demon, fattened on centuries of sin, would feel the lash of heavenly fury.
Guilt shadowed her, the lives risked, the potential for backlash raining down on the innocent. But redemption beckoned, a blow for the ages, echoing through eternity, proving that even in chains, the Spirit could summon fire from the skies. The stage was set. The players in position. And Harriet Tubman, the avenger in disguise, waited for the signal that would ignite the night, a conflagration not just of paper, but of souls seeking absolution in the flames. The South slumbered, oblivious to the judgment brewing in the shadows. But soon, the reckoning would dawn, and history would never be the same. In the grip of a merciless winter, Harriet Tubman orchestrated her descent into the belly of the beast, her every step a prayer etched in frost. It was December 1858, and Philadelphia's streets lay blanketed in snow, muffling the clatter of hooves and the cries of street vendors hawking hot chestnuts under flickering gas lamps. The air bit sharp, carrying the metallic tang of coal fires and the distant toll of church bells, summoning the faithful to vespers. But Harriet sought no ordinary sanctuary, hers was a war room shrouded in secrecy, a dimly lit chamber beneath a Quaker hall where the walls seemed to whisper echoes of ancient prophecies. She had mapped the vulnerabilities like a general surveying a battlefield scarred by sin. 43 plantations scattered across Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, not random targets, but citadels of corruption where record rooms squatted like profane altars, wooden shacks or isolated offices detached from the grand manors and the huddled slave quarters. These were the repositories of damnation, brittle pages chronicling births forced like unholy rituals, sales that severed families as casually as a butcher's knife, valuations that mocked the Creator's design by pricing souls like chattel. Harriet's informants, shadows in her vast network, had pinpointed them, places where a spark could devour the evidence without claiming innocent lives, where flames might masquerade as accidents born of neglect. Her team for the Richmond strike numbered 5, each a vessel of providence, chosen not just for skill but for the fire of conviction burning in their spirits. Yet the greatest obstacle loomed unyielding, the vault in the central office, a monolithic sentinel forged by the Herring Safe Company, its black iron hide impervious to fire and force. The combination lock, a labyrinth of tumblers, defied picks and drills, tamper with it, and it seized like a demon possessing its prey, jamming eternally. Guards patrolled with lanterns casting elongated shadows, their boots echoing on creaking floors like the footsteps of judgment deferred. Harriet knew brute strength wouldn't suffice, this required cunning, a key from the enemy's own hand. And in a twist that felt scripted by divine irony, the kind that makes one question if fate is mercy or mockery, a white locksmith named Robert Harrington emerged from the snow-swept ether. He sought out Thomas Garrett in Philadelphia's abolitionist underbelly, his coat dusted white, his face gaunt with the pallor of inner torment. Harrington, master of safes, had installed the very beast in Richmond 3 years prior, his tools etching security into the slaver's fortress. He carried duplicates of combinations like forbidden scrolls, a ledger of secrets from installations across the mid-Atlantic, including those shielding the profits of human traffickers. Garrett relayed the offer to Harriet, but suspicion coiled in her gut like a serpent in Eden. "Too neat," she murmured in the candlelit basement, her breath fogging the air as she paced, the floorboards groaning under her weight. In her world, gifts from strangers often hid poison. Betrayal was the slaver's favorite weapon. She unleashed her web, trusted eyes shadowed Harrington through icy streets, from his modest workshop smelling of oil and metal shavings to taverns where ale loosened tongues. False whispers were planted, decoy plans about minor thefts, to test if they'd bloom into traps. Weeks blurred into a vigil of doubt, Harriet's prayers fervent, invoking the discernment of Solomon, "Lord, reveal the wolf in sheep's clothing, lest your justice be thwarted." The truth unfolded like a reluctant confession. Harrington was no charlatan, his crisis was genuine, birthed from a hellish spectacle in Richmond. While fitting a safe nearby, he'd witnessed an auction's barbarity, a mother, her ebony skin glistening with sweat and tears under the harsh sun, chained on a platform. Like a sacrificial lamb. Her 3 children, wide-eyed innocents, their tiny hands clutching her skirts, were pried away, sold to distant bidders amid bids barked like demonic incantations. Her wails pierced the air, a lament that echoed the cries of Hagar in the wilderness, a sound that haunted Harrington's dreams, twisting his sleep into nightmares of judgment. On a January night thick with falling snow, flakes swirling like lost souls outside the safe house window, Harriet confronted him. The room crackled with firelight, shadows leaping on walls adorned with faded quilts, symbols of hidden messages. Garrett stood sentinel, his presence a bridge between worlds. Harriet's gaze bored into Harrington, unblinking, seeking the fracture in his soul. "Why now?" she demanded, her voice low and resonant, carrying the timbre of Old Testament prophets. "You've bolted the gates of hell for years, profited from the blood money. What phantom drives you to our door?" Harrington's hands, calloused from wrenches and dials, clenched as he met her eyes. "I have a daughter," he confessed, his voice cracking like thin ice. 7 years old, with curls like sunlight and questions that pierced the heart. She asked where I vanished to on my travels, what worlds I build with my tools. I couldn't confess it, that her warm bed, her laughter, rests on the screams of other children. That I forge cages for families torn asunder. It's sin's shadow over my hearth, and I can't bear it. I can't redeem the past, but perhaps this unravels a thread. Harriet weighed his words, sensing the raw edge of repentance, a soul grappling with the prodigal's return. Yet trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, compartmentalization was her creed. She fed him a half-truth, the combination for forging freedom papers, documents to spirit souls north. He yielded it, numbers scrawled on parchment like a cipher from ancient texts, along with blueprints of the building's veins, hidden entries, guard paths, weak points. He departed ignorant of the inferno brewing, shielded by her mercy, a reluctant ally in the divine scheme. By January's end, the mosaic was complete. The network pulsed with readiness, an ethereal grid spanning states, bound by faith and furtive signals. Harriet selected February 23, 1859, a moonless Wednesday, when vigilance waned midweek, routines lulled into complacency. Almanacs consulted under lantern light confirmed the darkness, a veil for stealth. It preceded a grand auction, drawing traders like moths to flame, ensuring the office brimmed with fresh abominations, records ripe for purgation. The signal cascaded like a hymn from heaven, "Steal away to Jesus," intoned at a deliberate tempo in a Baltimore church, its notes carrying coded urgency. It rippled south via wandering laborers, hired out souls shuttling between domains, visitors bridging plantations. Within fortnights, 43 operatives, isolated flames in the night, knew their hour, midnight, February 23. Each acted in solitude, unaware of the chorus, Tubman's masterstroke. Capture one, and they spilled only personal defiance, not the symphony of sabotage. Torture might break bodies, but not the unseen whole. It was the strategy of Gideon, few against many, faith over force. Harriet infiltrated Richmond on February 20, the train's whistle slicing the air like a warning from on high. Segregated cars reeked of sweat and despair, bodies jostled amid iron planks. As Aunt Mary, she shuffled aboard, papers forged impeccable, claiming hire to the fictitious Prescotts near the Capitol. Inspections at barriers, stern faces under kepis, lanterns probing. Passed with her deferential mumble, eyes averted like the meek inheriting earth. Richmond sprawled in paradoxical splendor, neoclassical facades gleaming white, porticos evoking republics long fallen to tyranny. Carriages rolled on cobblestones, ladies in crinolines trailed by silent attendants bearing parasols. Church spires thrust heavenward, bells pealing piety. Yet beneath pulsed the artery of atrocity, auction blocks on broad avenues, chains rattling as processions marched from depots to pens, the air fouled by despair's stench mingling with river mud and forge smoke. It was Babylon rebuilt, opulence atop oppression. She quartered in a boarding house run by Catherine, a free black woman whose eyes held unspoken alliances, her establishment a haven for the hired out. Sparse rooms with straw pallets, meals of corn mush and greens, Harriet paid the fee from phantom owners, blending into the rhythm. Days feigned labor, errands through throned markets, basket in hand, observing patrols' cadences, their boots thudding like accusatory heartbeats. Escape veins memorized, alleys twisting like labyrinths, buildings with shadowed nooks. The target, a squat brick edifice near docks, 3 stories of sin's bureaucracy. Ground floor buzzed with deals, voices haggling over lives like livestock. Second, clerks bent over desks, quills scratching fates. Third, locked descent to the vault, sanctum of secrets. Guards alternated, days vigilant youth, night sodden veteran, William Hodges, whose bottle dulled his edge. Harriet shadowed him thrice, noting midnight's haze, rounds perfunctory, back door neglected, retreat to desk with liquid solace. The team converged covertly. James, on business, Sarah, city-savvy ex-domestic, brothers Thomas and William, firemasters from seafaring days, Daniel, agile lookout. No gatherings, missives via drops, brick crevices, tree hollows, church pew cracks, coded in Harriet's symbology, arcane as hieroglyphs.
February 22nd, Final Vigil.
Harriet circled the bastion, senses acute, window placements, lock types, no anomalies.
Evening watch confirmed Hodges' stupor.
Night fell restless, in her cot, city murmurs invaded, laughter from taverns, wagon rumbles, canine yaps. Doubts assailed like tempters, guard whims, patrol intrusions, network fractures, faulty codes, flames turning traitors. She pondered the 43 faceless martyrs risking lashes, gibbets.
Worth the pyre? Or futile gesture against Leviathan?
Visions assailed, endless rescues versus systemic rot, breeding farms as Moloch's altars, auctions echoing Calvary's division of garments. Thy kingdom come, she prayed, tears freezing on cheeks, resolve hardening like tempered steel.
Dawn broke cold, February 23rd.
Harriet toiled incognito, sweeping, fetching, body protesting the hunch. Evening feigned ailment, Catherine's tea, laced with knowing glance. At 11, window escape into night's embrace, streets alive with stragglers, patrols lanterns bobbing like will-o-wisps.
Basket prop, shuffle gate.
Rendezvous with James in warehouse gloom, bag exchanged, shuttered lantern, picks, accelerants alchemy born for voracious burn. Whispers, team poised, plantations primed. To shadowed vigil opposite target.
Hodges round, lantern sway, checks lax, retreat to bottles glow. Midnight's cusp, cross, back lock yielded in whispers. Inside, dim, Hodges clinks distant. Stairlock battle 4 eternal minutes, each tick a thunderclap.
Ascent cautious, boards protesting softly. Third floor, cabinets like tombs, vault monolithic.
Combination invoked, digits spun with breath held. Failure twice, panics chill. Third, full rotations, click divine. Door yielded, bowels spilling ledgers, lives ledgered, bred like beasts. Piles amassed, irreplaceable tomes. Accelerants poised when James tensed, downstairs, door creak, voices multiplying, laughter ominous.
In the suffocating hush of the third-floor chamber, Harriet Tubman and James stood petrified, the shuttered lantern's feeble glow casting elongated shadows that twisted like tormented wraiths on the walls. The air thickened with the metallic tang of fear, mingling with the faint mustiness of aged paper and oil iron from the open vault. Below, voices erupted, boisterous, slurred with liquor, slicing through the night like unwelcome omens. Cold night like this calls for company, Hodges, one bellowed, followed by the clink of bottles and the scrape of chairs on wooden floors. Laughter boomed, raw and unrefined, as cards slapped onto a table. It was Hodges, the night guard, entertaining stragglers, perhaps off-duty watchmen from neighboring warehouses, seeking warmth and whiskey in the dead hours. Harriet's pulse thundered in her ears, a rhythmic drumbeat echoing the biblical plague she invoked in her deepest prayers. They were trapped on this upper level, the stairs their only exodus, now a gauntlet guarded by oblivious revelers. The windows loomed high, framed by iron bars that glinted mockingly in the dim light, a 3-story drop to cobblestones below promising shattered bones and capture. No ropes, no ledges, just the void, cold and unforgiving as the Pharaoh's heart. Her mind raced through psalms of deliverance, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. But this was no valley, it was a Tower of Babel, built on the backs of the enslaved, and she was here to topple it. The pile of extracted records lay heaped on the floor like sacrificial offerings, leather-bound ledgers heavy with the weight of generational curses, pages yellowed and brittle, inscribed with the cold calculus of human commodification. Births forced in shadowed cabins, lineages traced like cattle pedigrees, values assigned to flesh as if appraising stolen gold from the temple. Harriet's fingers, roughened by years of labor and evasion, itched to complete the rite. This was her burning bush, her command from on high: purge the abomination, let fire consume the evidence of man's hubris against God's creation. With a nod to James, whose face was etched with the strain of suppressed panic, eyes wide, breath shallow, she knelt swiftly, her skirts whispering against the floorboards. The chemical accelerants, concealed in vials like potions of divine wrath, were poured with precision, a viscous liquid that seeped into the stacks, its acrid scent biting the nostrils like brimstone. This wasn't ordinary flame, it was engineered inferno, a slow-building fury that would erupt in minutes, devouring all without mercy. Enough delay for escape, but inexorable once ignited, a judgment that brooked no reprieve. They retreated to the stairwell's gloom, backs pressed against cool walls that seemed to pulse with the building's secrets. Time stretched like taut sinew, 5 minutes, 10, the pocket watch's hands creeping under the lantern's sliver of light. Below, the merriment dragged on, tales of hunts and harvests, jests laced with cruelty, glasses refilling with amber poison. Harriet closed her eyes, invoking silent supplication, "Lord, part these waters as you did the red." But the visitors lingered, their presence a thorn in the side of Providence. At 12:47, the watch's face gleamed ominously. 3 minutes until ignition. A farewell from one guest, footsteps retreating to the door, but the core remained, 2 voices plus Hodges, slurring through another hand of cards. 12:49, the first whiff of reaction, sharp and chemical, rising like incense from a profane altar. Harriet's gaze locked with James's, no words needed. The flames would not wait. Divine timing demanded action. They descended, each step a calculated whisper, testing boards for creaks, bodies low and fluid like ghosts in the ether. The second-floor landing passed in a blur, voices below swelling in oblivious mirth, shuffles, clinks, guffaws. Harriet's hand grazed the knife at her belt, a cold comfort, symbol of her ruthless resolve, the same steel that had coerced wavering souls on freedom trails. Free or die, she'd once vowed, now it applied to this mission, this exorcism of systemic evil. First floor, Hodges's room to the right, lamplight spilling like spilled blood across the threshold. The back door beckoned, 20 feet of shadowed corridor away. 15. Behind them, the third floor stirred, a faint crackle, then whoosh as chemicals met paper, flames birthing with voracious hunger, leaping to beams like avenging seraphim. 10 feet. What's that smell? A voice sharpened below, sobriety piercing the haze. 5 feet. Something's burning. Harriet and James exploded through the door into the alley's chill embrace, night air slapping their faces like redemption's gust. Chaos erupted behind, fire. The whole damned place. Shouts mingled with pounding feet, the guard and guests charging stairs only to recoil from the blaze's roar of flames now visible, orange tongues licking windows, illuminating the street in hellish glow. They sprinted, abandoning disguises, feet pounding cobblestones slick with frost, breaths pluming in the cold. At the fork, they parted, James vanishing left into fog-shrouded lanes, Harriet right toward the blacksmith's haven. The city awoke in fragments, distant bells tolling alarm, silhouettes gathering at the blaze's edge. She slipped into the storage room, bolts sliding home with a finality like sealed tombs. Collapsed against crates smelling of soot and iron, her body trembled, not from cold, but the aftershocks of near damnation. Hands shook as she clutched her Bible, fingers tracing embossed leather, seeking solace in verses of fire and fury, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. The records were ashes now, the vault's heart gutted, breeding charts dissolved into nothingness, a spiritual cleansing, erasing the blasphemies that reduced God's image to merchandise. But the plantations? The network's symphony of sabotage? Uncertainty gnawed like original sin, a vigil through the witching hours, prayers ascending with the distant smoke. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving over Richmond, the James River murmuring indifferent secrets to its banks. The office stood scarred but standing, ground floors spared, but the third a charred skeleton, beams blackened like accused heretics. Hodges and his companions escaped unscathed, their tales of sudden inferno met with suspicion. Interrogations followed in smoke-filled rooms, whips cracking for truths, but no forced entry evident, James's relocking a masterful deceit. Verdict, accident, Hodges's vice the culprit, a dropped cigar or tipped lamp. The company lamented, vowing rebuild from scattered copies, costly but feasible. Yet Providence unfolded its scroll slowly. Over 3 days, couriers arrived dust-weary, letters bearing seals of panic, Henrico County's Whitfield plantation, records devoured midnight February 23, lamp mishap. Caroline's Thornton, office gutted, same hour. Hanover's Patterson, Chesterfield's Reynolds, Prince George's Mitchell, a litany of accidents, flames surgical, sparing homes and quarters but claiming the profane archives. By February 27, the mosaic revealed, coordinated cataclysm, not coincidence. Terror rippled through the elite like the seventh plague, parlors in Richmond and Raleigh buzzing with hushed dread. Militias mustered under leaden skies, patrols tripled, lanterns piercing nights like inquisitorial eyes. Enslaved souls near record rooms were dragged to barns reeking of hay and fear, bodies broken under lashes, brands searing flesh, water forced until confessions bubbled, but none came. Tubman's design held, isolates in ignorance, unable to betray the whole. Peter's noose in Mecklenburg, Hannah's sail south, martyrs in the cause, their cries echoing Job's lament. Yet most endured, masks of subservience veiling triumphant spirits. 37 triumphs from 43, beyond mortal hope, a divine multiplication like loaves and fishes. With Richmond's core ashes, the blow was mortal, breeding empires crumbled, genealogies vanished, auctions halted amid unverifiable claims. Values plummeted, disputes clogged courts like silted rivers, insurers balked, banks foreclosed. The Richmond firm dissolved in bankruptcy's mire, others limped, the trade's machinery grinding to rust. Estimates whispered millions lost, 60-fold in modern coin, but the spiritual toll, chaos as redemption, exposing slavery's fragility, a house built on sand. Unforeseen shadows loomed. The planters' fear birthed brutality anew, literacy hunts intensified, gatherings forbidden without overseer's gaze, hires curtailed, passes scrutinized like heretical texts. Infractions met fiercer rods, whippings public, degradations ritualized. Harriet's strike, meant to loosen chains, tighten them short-term, innocence paying the tithe of her audacity. In later letters, unearthed from dusty archives, she confessed the burden, I sought to wound the beast, not its captives. Yet they bore the scars. Their faces haunt my visions, cries in the night like Rachel weeping for her children. But the end neared, we shook the throne, hastened the reckoning war that birthed liberty. Historians debate, accelerant to abolition or feudal spark? Harriet fled Richmond pre-dawn February 24, and Mary trudging north via hidden havens, footpaths through misted woods, wagons creaking under hay, trains rattling segregated cars. 5 days of vigil, paranoia. Shadowing every glance. Philadelphia's embrace on March 1, Garrett's grave tidings, successes tallied, chaos sown, but lives lost, others vanished into trade's abyss. She wept then, tears carving paths down weathered cheeks, a rare fracture in her armor, grief for the fallen, the unintended sufferers, the moral calculus of war. Yet resolve unbroken, freedom's price is blood, she affirmed. Resuming rescues in 59 and 60, cautious amid heightened hunts, she veiled the truth eternally. Other work, her cryptic reply to queries. Authorities groped blindly, her shadow untraced. In the ember's legacy, a spiritually chilling echo, acts of justice ripple eternally, redeeming some while testing others in fire. Harriet carried that cross, her soul forged in the crucible, a prophet whose visions birthed dawn from deepest night. The system cracked, the war loomed, divine retribution's slow, inexorable march. In the shadowed aftermath of February 1859, Harriet Tubman resurfaced in Philadelphia's bustling undercurrents, a ghost reclaiming flesh amid the clamor of horse-drawn carts rumbling over rain-slicked cobblestones and the distant chime of church bells calling the weary to prayer. The air hung heavy with the scent of baking bread from corner ovens and the acrid bite of coal smoke from factory chimneys, a city pulsing with the uneasy rhythm of a nation on the brink. She took up quiet work as a domestic servant in a modest row house, her hands, scarred from thorns and chains, scrubbing floors polished to a dull sheen, folding linens crisp as fresh snow, all while her mind wandered the scorched trails of her recent crusade. No daring rescues marked those early months, no whispers of midnight escapes filtered through abolitionist circles. To the world, she was invisible, a pause in the historical scroll, a breath held before the storm. But secrets bound souls like invisible shackles. Thomas Garrett, with his weathered face framed by a beard like ancient moss, knew the truth in his bones. Frederick Douglass, his voice a thunderclap in parlors of power, guarded it with coated quills. William Still, the chronicler whose journals were fortresses of forgotten names, etched it in veiled ink. Their correspondence danced around the inferno, words chosen like steps through a minefield, no names, no dates, only allusions to troubles in Virginia and necessary work that carried the weight of divine mandates. In March, Douglass's letter arrived at Garrett's door, sealed with wax bearing the imprint of a Liberty Bell, its parchment crisp under flickering candlelight. Reports of southern disturbances reach me, he wrote, his script elegant yet terse, evoking the caution of prophets in exile. Should our mutual acquaintance bear any hand in them, may Providence shield her. Her labors, veiled as they are, shall resound in eternity, though mortals may grasp only echoes. Garrett's reply, penned in a study lined with abolitionist tracts and maps faded from constant unfolding, mirrored the restraint she endures, pursuing paths ordained. The deed was imperative, yet its shadows lengthen. Posterity may discern the light we glimpsed dimly. Still's entry, scrawled in a ledger bound in worn leather, was a solitary sentinel. The wanderer returns from shadowed realms. Triumph mingled with toll. We utter not, but the memory burns eternal. These fragments, sparse as desert oases, were the only ripples on history's surface. The rest, deliberate voids, incinerated missives, excised pages, silences thick as fog over the Delaware River. It wasn't until 1868, 3 years after the Civil War's cannons fell silent and emancipation's ink dried on proclamations, that Harriet unburdened her soul. In a modest Auburn parlor, sunlight slanting through lace curtains like bars of judgment, she confided in Sarah Bradford, a biographer whose quill sought to weave heroism into funds for Tubman's threadbare existence. Bradford, her dress rustling like whispered confessions, listened as Harriet's voice, low and resonant, laced with the cadence of spirituals, unveiled the saga, the basement plots in Philadelphia's damp underbelly, the network's ethereal web of songs and symbols, the midnight flames devouring ledgers like sacrificial pyres. Details poured forth, the chemical hiss igniting paper souls, the frantic dash through Richmond's alleys reeking of river mud and fear, the spiritual torment of costs unforeseen. Bradford's notes, captured in a notebook with pages yellowing at the edges, trembled with the revelation. Yet, in a postscript etched with hesitant strokes, she decreed burial. Harriet's narrative of 58 to 59 defies belief, its ramifications perilous. Society craves her as the gentle Moses, parting seas with faith alone. To unveil her as architect of widespread ruin, arson on a scale biblical, would tarnish her aura, invite reprisals from those nursing grudges over fortunes lost. Slavery's chains are broken, but vengeance lingers. For her safeguard in sanctity, this chapter remains entombed. Her rescues suffice for glory. Thus, Bradford's 1869 biography emerged pristine, a tapestry of trails blazed under starlit canopies, wartime valor in Union camps thick with gunpowder and groans, faith unyielding as Sinai's stone. No whisper of fires, the gap in 58 to 59 glossed as other duties, a veil over the volcano. Those notes slumbered in obscurity, tucked in Bradford's archives like forbidden scrolls in a pharaoh's tomb. Decades waned, the Gilded Age's opulence masking Reconstruction scars, until 1967, when Patricia Chen, a graduate student with eyes sharp as archival scalpels, unearthed them at Syracuse University. Dust motes danced in the library's filtered light, the scent of aged paper evoking graves disturbed. Chen's pulse quickened as connections ignited. Bradford's account aligned with Garrett's fragmented letter, photographed before vanishing into private vaults, court dockets from southern halls, ink faded but disputes vivid, ownership claims dissolving like smoke, families contested amid legal tempests born of ash, plantation logs, their bindings cracked, chronicling midnight blazes that spared lives but devoured lineages, newspapers yellowed with age, headlines screaming panic among traders, markets stuttering like hearts in arrhythmia. Chen wove these threads into Harriet Tubman and the fires of 1859, a hidden chapter in the fight against slavery, a manuscript dense with footnotes and fervor. Submissions flew to journals, the Journal of American History first, its rejection terse as a slammed door, evidence insufficient, linkages speculative. The Journal of Southern History elaborated, intriguing, yet contentious. Portraying Tubman as arsonist erodes her pedestal, demands irrefutable proof. 2 more rejections followed, echoes of academic gates clanging shut. Her advisor, in a office cluttered with tomes, cautioned, abandon this, it courts ruin. Conventional paths lead to tenure. Chen persisted briefly, her dissertation skirting the blaze, securing her degree and a modest post. But the article moldered unpublished, a casualty of orthodoxy's chill. The embers flickered on. In 2003, historian Marcus Williams, delving into the domestic slave trades ledgers for a tome on commerce and flesh, discovered a scorched relic from Richmond's office, a second-floor survivor, pages warped by water and char, yet legible in patches. Amid valuations and transfers, a penciled addendum, sabotage presumed.
Aged Negro female observed prior, grade locks, hunched gait, Maryland inflection. Ties to abolitionist webs suspected. $500 bounty for capture. It mirrored Tubman's Aunt Mary guise, the ash-smeared hair, the feigned limp echoing through urban scrutiny, the accent a bridge to her Eastern Shore roots. Williams's book, chapters dense with economic dissections, devoted one to the fires, positing Tubman's orchestration with scholarly hedges, circumstantial yet compelling evidence implicates. Reviews polarized, acclaim for unearthed truths, censure for besmirching an icon. Debates rage in seminar halls lit by fluorescent hum, historians parsing proofs, the 58 to 59 hiatus aligning with orchestration, abolitionists' cryptic epistles, Bradford's sealed confessions, synchronized blazes across states, legal quagmires post-inferno, the ledger's phantom suspect. Individually dismissible as happenstance, collectively, a mosaic of intent, spiritually resonant as the handwriting on Belshazzar's wall, a divine indictment of bondage. Why the suppression? Not conspiracy's shadow, but a mosaic of motives, revealing history's selective lens. Post-bellum America craved absolution, Lincoln as Messiah, penning freedom. Union bayonets as liberators. Enslaved agency, Tubman's network as a subterranean army, flames as righteous thunder, disrupted the tale, implying self-liberation, validating sabotage as exodus tactic. Abolitionists, many Quaker pacifists, favored persuasion over pyres, rescues evoked compassion, not the Old Testament's vengeful God. Fear fermented, in labor's ferment, strikes scorching factories, Tubman's saga might ignite copycats, property's sanctity challenged. Sanitization sculpted her statue, biographies echoing Bradford, stamps bearing her serene visage, schoolbooks lauding starry treks. Fires? Mere anomalies, unlinked to resistance. As civil rights elevated her, the image polished, non-violent guide, not systemic arsonist. Parallels abound, King's dream exalted, his anti-war fire muted, Parks's bust defiance canonized, her radical roots pruned, revolution's tea parties romanticized, loyalist tar and featherings glossed. Heroes sanitized, brave yet palatable, challenging sans upheaval. Tubman defies molds, complex as Jobs trials, weighing souls against strategy. Rescues heroic, yes, but sabotage a spiritual gambit, flames purging Pharaoh's scrolls, yet backlash birthing Pharaoh's hardened heart, repressions intensified, innocence scourged. Worth the altar? Did it accelerate abolition's chariot, or merely scorch the path? Questions echo eternally, demanding we confront tactics' thorns, consequences' crowns. Post-1859, she resumed the railroad's rhythm, 8 perilous forays, swamps whispering dangers, patrols lanterns like demonic eyes. War's bugle in 61 summoned her, cook in camps redolent of stew and sepsis, nurse amid fevered moans, then scout, spy-eyed gliding through Confederate mists, intelligence like manna. June 1863's Combahee raid, gunboats slicing Carolina waters under moonless veil, signals to plantations hidden faithful, 700 souls ferried to liberty, largest single emancipation, her blueprint etched in military annals. Peacetime found her in Auburn, New York, homestead bought pre-war, wed to Nelson Davis, Union vet whose hands bore battle's marks. Activism endured, suffrage rallies under gaslit halls, a haven for aged black kin, rooms echoing hymns and histories. To 1913 she lived, 91 years etched in resilience, speeches weaving underground tales, dangers danced with faith's grace. Yet 58 to 59? Other labors, her deflection, eyes distant as prophetic visions. She confided in Bradford, entrusting the blaze's truth, but burial followed. Secrets, though, ascend like Lazarus, archives yielding letters, notes, logs. Gaps persist, nameless network ghosts, codes precise cadence, participants' fates lost to time's erosion. Yet enough endures, Tubman is tactician supreme, assaulting slavery's bedrock, risks embraced like crosses, freedom's price paid in full. February's fires, no mishaps, but rebellion's roar planned, precise, profound. Economic tremors lingered, trade fractured, systems seemed stressed toward war's rupture. Tubman accelerated apocalypse? Uncertain, but she struck, mobilizing multitudes, infiltrating evil's core, vanishing unscathed. This narrative, shunned by America, complicates, sabotages salvation, violence countering violence, credit shared beyond saviors' statues. Tell it we must, for Tubman, not emblem, but essence. Fighter wielding every weapon, rescues, raids, flames.
To honor her, burn myths, rebuild from truth's ashes. The records perished, legacies endure, spiritually chilling, eternally just.